yeah, ever since the announcement of Trigun Stampede, backed by Studio Orange, the sort of Trigun fan base, and I put that in air quotes because I'm going to be honest, a lot of Trigun fans straight up haven't watched Trigun.
Mhm.
But yeah, a lot of people sort of reacted pretty negatively because Trigun is a pretty famous series. It came out, in the era of Cowboy Bebop and all
It
those
is
other
very famous.
Toonami era anime.
I would
So
also
people
say it was formative, or inspirational for a lot of people as well,
for
who are in
sure,
the industry. Yeah.
yeah. Um, but Trigun, as a series, has a very interesting history with its adaptations in relation to the source material. Um, but yeah, so the fact that this was a CG anime, people were already upset about. And then when they revealed Vash's redesign, people chimped out. People were really upset.
That's me.
Um, yeah, and um, and then the anime came out, and people effectively just shit on it for literally no reason. A lot
Mhm.
of so if you look online about reviews or whatever about Trigun Stampede, if you see a negative review that is sort of like initially starts off with, as a fan of the original, or if you've watched the
Yeah.
original, um, they're immediately going to vomit out a bunch of diarrhea about how this series just doesn't get the original, or it it's just totally different, and not it doesn't adhere to the source material at all.
Also,
Um,
ick 3D CG.
yeah. Also, it's CG, and I don't like that, and it's yucky. Um, those reviews are effectively like you really don't even need to read them, because most of those people watched one episode. They already didn't like the series from the initial promotional material. They had already made up their mind.
Mhm.
And Trigun fans, again, I'm going to put this in air quotes, are very similar to really any fans of very classic anime. I'd
Mhm.
say, you know, it's sort of, I guess, similar to the reaction. Obviously, a bit more um, violent, I guess. It's a bit more of a um, harsh reaction to something I'd say comparable to when they announced the Evangelion movies, right? And how they would be sort of changing up the story. Um, Fans of classic anime, 90s anime, really don't like change. They really don't
I
like,
hate his hair, Near.
yeah, well, I mean, his hair is like literally the least of these people's issues. Um,
I hate his gun too, Near.
yeah, people don't like his hair, people don't like his glasses, people don't like his coat, people don't like his arm, people don't like his gun. And so you have all this dumb shit, all this superficial shit, and people already make up their minds where they don't like the character, like they just don't like it. It's not Vash, right? Um, and they view this series with a lens of like immediate negativity. Um, and the issue is, uh, you kind of have to ask yourself, could Studio Orange, or really any studio, do Trigun today, um, without it either being A, boring as fuck because they don't change anything, and then
Mhm.
it's lambasted because it's like, why would you watch this new series when you could literally just go back and watch the 98 series,
Or just
right?
like remaster, HD
Yeah.
remaster something, yeah.
Or B, get shit on all over because they changed a single aspect of the story, like literally
Mhm.
anything. And
It's like the classic Sayonara Zutsubo Sensei thing where they're going into an alleyway and like it's about like there's a director who's like, "Oh, it's just homage. It's just an homage. Don't
yeah,
hit me. Don't
yeah,
hit me."
yeah. Um, and the answer is no. Like you literally cannot make Trigun today without the fans like shitting and pissing themselves, right? Because if you don't change anything, there's no point in watching it. But if you do change anything, there's no point in watching it, right? Because
Yes, yes,
the
yes.
original 1998 Trigun is the holy gospel. Like if you touch it at all, it's like blasphemy, you know.
Mhm.
And I myself am a fan of Trigun. I like Trigun. It's got a really cool aesthetic. It's got a really cool story. It's got really fun characters. But I'm gonna be honest. The original 1998 anime is paced horribly.
Mhm.
It deviates from the manga a lot, right? Because when that series came out, Trigun, like halfway through the manga production, effectively got canceled, right? Like, it basically got canned. And the studio was like, well, we have to fill out these episodes, right? Like we're we're hired for a certain number of episodes, so we sort of have to just go in a direction. And obviously they worked with the mangaka to make a story. And then afterwards the manga continued, right? And the manga went in a
Right.
different direction, like a totally different direction. Um, and then movies came out later that followed the manga more closely, and people shit on those movies. Trigun fans shit on the movies which followed the manga.
Near his gun sucks though.
I mean, his gun isn't relevant in this. Like, it's not relevant. But it's like you literally can't make Trigun after the 1998 anime because everybody that watched that show in 1998 have this like idolization of it, to where like, you know, that is Trigun, right? And
I
I
think
think
the
it's
important part is that also, like, there are obviously, like, you always want to keep the good stuff if possible, and it works, right? But
yeah,
I think the important point that you're implying, right? The most important point that you're implying is that Trigun fans are getting held up over parts of it that may look like it's symbolically so important, but it's not actually that important to Trigun in the in the
yeah,
plot and
it's
the
like
actual
it's
nature
not.
of the
It's
story.
not.
Right.
Like Toast can piss and moan about the fact that Vash's gun isn't a 45 caliber anymore. But it's like,
22, my dude.
does that matter? Does that matter? No, it
It
doesn't
matters to
matter.
me. It looks less
Um,
cool, Near.
it doesn't matter. He doesn't even shoot his gun in this series. Like he hates shooting his gun. Um,
Honestly, I would feel better if he had a laser gun or a stun gun. Because what made Trigun so good was that old 90s aesthetic of gritty cowboy stuff.
Yeah,
And,
so that's another thing I want to get into is
alright,
that every time people talk about Trigun, right, the original Trigun, they say, "Oh, it's this cool 90s anime and it's like a western, right?" And nobody ever talks about the plants, nobody ever talks about the sci-fi shit, nobody ever talks about the space colony shit because honestly, in the original Trigun, that stuff sucked ass. It was terribly done. There were really bad twists that were done like 75% of the way through the series. They added really nothing. Um, and it was just not good, right? And there's
Near,
a
do you like
reason.
Wild Arms?
Yeah, I do.
Good.
Wild Arms is good. Um,
Do
but
you
yeah, like
think Wild Arms would be popular nowadays? Because Wild Arms has that whole 90s gunslinger aesthetic that I
I,
don't think holds well nowadays.
I mean, it's tricky, right? Because again, the aesthetic of 90s anime, and the way that like 90s anime was done, with the style, with the big hair, um, the way eyes were done, the sharper faces. I think it lends itself very well to that sort of um, cowboy westerny, slightly gritty yet slightly
Escapism.
comedic.
Escapism.
Yeah, like just that aesthetic, right?
Mhm.
And I think the way a lot of anime is done today, it's sort of harder to land that aesthetic, right? Obviously, Western
Yeah.
like Western style anime has come out in the past few years, right? Whether it be some weird bent on a Japanese style Western or a raw Western, but they really just don't hit the same, right?
People want a little bit more damp, muted,
Yeah,
organic
whether it's
look.
due to the colors or just the fact that
Superman has to think about killing people now.
things are animated digitally now instead of on cells. There's a lot that goes into that old school Western aesthetic, right? And I think it's hard. It's very hard to recapture that.
I
It's like
think
how
the
Appare
only
Ramen also tried, right?
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
the only series that somehow captures the 90s gritty aesthetic and made it modern without losing its identity is actually Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's
Yeah,
like it
yeah.
has this
I think it really holds. I think another series that came pretty close to that was No Guns Life, actually. Had a really
Yes.
nice, like,
Yes,
sort of
yes.
gritty 90s-esque aesthetic. But yeah, it's very hard to capture these days. And I think if something like Wild Arms came out today,
Do you think it would go more towards this Trigun route? Because I think it would.
I think it would.
Or to make it more
I think
modern.
it would be
Yeah.
more. I think it would be a bit more. Um, it would be a bit more serious in tone. I think it wouldn't be as gritty. It would be a bit more, maybe somber.